Mr. Jessup sat at his desk. He was a man who looked as if he lived indoors, a man of desks and paper, and his office was at the end of a long underground corridor. Although Jessop's smooth, pale face had no expression, his eyes were tired. Walking with nervous energy up and down Jessop's office was Colonel Wharton. The Colonel had dark hair and a small moustache. "Reports!" he exclaimed loudly. "All we get is security reports, and they're all useless." Jessop looked down at the papers and documents on his desk. They all read, Betterton, Thomas. "Reports! Not just from Rome," continued the Colonel, "but from nearly every capital city in the world." He sat down abruptly. "We've got to find Thomas Betterton," he insisted. "He's like all these other top scientists that have disappeared recently. We still don't know where they are, and we don't know how or why they disappear either," he added. "Have you read the latest information on Betterton from America?" Jessop nodded. "Betterton worked in America before the war," he said. "His work was good, but ordinary. When the scientist Dr. Mannheim escaped to America from Germany, Betterton worked as his assistant, and he later married Dr. Mannheim's daughter, Elsa. After Dr. Mannheim died, Betterton worked on his own and became very famous when he discovered Z-fission, one of the most brilliant and important discoveries about nuclear science that's ever been made." "I don't understand the fission at all," said Colonel Wharton, "or anything about atom bombs or nuclear science. All I know is that these scientists now have the power to destroy the world." "Betterton became one of the most important scientists in the world," continued Jessop, "but his wife Elsa died soon after their marriage, and Betterton decided to come to England. He's been working at the nuclear laboratory in Harwell for the last 18 months. Just 6 months ago, he married again." "What about Betterton's second wife?" asked Wharton. "Anything of interest?" Jessop shook his head. "We can't find anything," he said. "She's the daughter of a local lawyer and worked in an office before her marriage." "What do the people at Harwell say about Betterton?" Wharton asked. "They said that he was a pleasant man," Jessop replied. "He worked on the practical uses of Z-fission. Nothing new or original." Both men were silent for a moment as they looked at the big pile of security reports on the desk. "Was Betterton thoroughly investigated before he arrived in England?" asked Colonel Wharton. "Yes, of course, everything was satisfactory." "And Betterton's been here 18 months, said Wharton thoughtfully. "Sometimes these scientists get nervous and upset because they're always watched so carefully, for security reasons, of course. They begin to dream of an ideal world, peace and freedom for everyone. They want to share their secrets and their work with all the world, for the good of humanity. That's exactly the moment when someone can persuade them to sell their secrets and betray their country." "It would help if I knew more about Betterton," said Jessop, looking again at the papers on his desk. "Not about his work, but about the everyday things. What made him laugh, the people he admired, or what made him angry." "Can't his wife tell you that?" asked Wharton. "She hasn't helped me much so far," said Jessop. "She says she doesn't know anything about her husband's disappearance. She says she thinks he's been kidnapped." "What's she like?" "She seems like a very ordinary woman," said Jessop. "She's waiting to see me now. I'll ask her the same questions again and see if she can tell me anything new. Wharton nodded. It's the only way, he said. Let me know if you learn anything interesting. He left the room as Jessop picked up the phone and told his assistant to send in Mrs. Betterton. Mrs. Olive Betterton was a tall woman of about 27. The first thing you noticed about her was her beautiful red hair. Because her hair was so lovely, you didn't really notice what her face looked like. She had blue-green eyes and light eyelashes. "Oh, Mr. Jessup," she said breathlessly as she sat down. "Is there any news?" "No, I'm sorry," said Jessup gently. "There's no definite news. I just wanted to ask you the same questions in case you remember some small detail that could help." Yes, I understand," said Mrs. Betterton. "I don't mind. It's better than sitting at home, wondering. Ask me any questions you like." "So, the last time you saw your husband was on the 23rd of August, when he left to go to a conference in Paris?" "Yes." "He went to the first 2 days of the conference," said Jessup, "but on the 3rd day he told a colleague that he was going on a boat trip on the River Seine. Does that seem likely?" "It is a little strange that he missed the conference," admitted Mrs. Betterton. "He didn't return to his hotel that evening," continued Jessup, "and he didn't travel to another country using his own passport. Do you know if he had a second passport in another name, perhaps?" No, of course not. And he wouldn't just go away without telling me." "Was his health all right?" asked Jessup. "Yes. He was working hard and sometimes felt tired, that's all," said Mrs. Betterton. "He wasn't worried or unhappy about anything, if that's what you mean. Something must have happened to him." She opened her handbag and took out a handkerchief. "It's all so awful," she said, her voice shaking. "Something's happened to Tom. He's been kidnapped or he's dead. Now please, Mrs. Betterton, there's no need to think that your husband is dead. We would have found his body by now." She took the handkerchief away from her eyes and stared at him, suddenly angry. "I know what you think," she said, "but it's not true. Tom would never sell secrets or betray his country. He was a scientist, a brilliant scientist." "Yes," agreed Jessup. "He was a brilliant scientist. That's why he might have been offered a large amount of money to work in another country." "It's not true," repeated Olive Betterton angrily. "He would have told me. He would have given me some clue. But he told me nothing. I don't know where he is. He must have been kidnapped, or he's dead. But I need to know. I must know. I can't go on like this, waiting and wondering. I can't eat or sleep. I'm sick with worry. Can't you help me? Can't you help me at all?" "I'm very sorry, Mrs. Betterton," said Jessup gently. "We're doing our best to find out what's happened to your husband. We get lots of reports every day, but there is still no definite news." "I must know," she said again. "I can't go on like this. Do you love your husband, Mrs. Betterton?" "Of course I love him. We've only been married 6 months." "So you hadn't argued with him before he disappeared?" "Oh, no." "And there was, I'm sorry to ask, no other woman?" "Of course not. I've told you. We were only married in April." "I'm sorry, but we have to think of everything," said Jessup. "I'm trying to find out what your husband was like, and you're not helping me very much." "But I've answered all your questions." "Yes, you have," said Jessup, "but your answers are mainly negative. I want something positive, something that tells me the kind of person your husband is." She thought for a moment. Well, she said, Tom was cheerful and good-tempered. And clever, of course. Jessop sighed. Did your husband have many friends? He was in America for so long, said Mrs. Betterton, that he didn't know many people here. Jessop looked at a paper on his desk. I have a report here, he said, that 2 people from America visited your husband recently. The first was called Walter Griffiths. Yes, I remember him. Tom was surprised to see him, but very pleased. They were good friends in America. Griffiths was very anxious to tell Tom everything that had happened after he left, all the local gossip, I suppose. I didn't listen very closely. And the second person to visit your husband was a woman called Carol Speeder. Oh, yes. She had known Tom in America and rang him up from London to ask if we could meet for lunch, but we didn't go in the end. You didn't go, but your husband did. What? Mrs. Betterton stared at him. So he didn't tell you? It was on the 12th of August. Mrs. Betterton looked uneasy. Yes, Tom did go to London then. Did you notice any change in your husband's behaviour about that time? It was a week before the conference. No, I noticed nothing, she said. There was nothing to notice. The telephone on Jessop's desk rang and he picked up the receiver. There's a man asking to see you, sir, said his assistant, about Thomas Betterton. He spelt out a foreign name that Jessop wrote down on a piece of paper. Is he from Poland? Jessop asked. He didn't say, sir. He speaks English well. Ask him to wait, Jessop said. I'll see him in a minute. He put down the phone. Do you know anybody with this name? Jessop asked, showing Mrs. Betterton the paper. Her eyes widened and he thought she looked frightened. Yes, she said. Yes, I do. He wrote to me yesterday. He's a cousin of Tom's first wife. He has just arrived in England and wrote to say how sorry he was that Tom had disappeared. He asked if I had any news. Did your husband ever talk about him? No. So he might not be any relation at all? Well, no, I suppose not. I didn't think of that. Olive Betterton looked surprised. But Tom's first wife was Dr. Mannheim's daughter. This man knew all about her. And why else would he write to me? I don't know, admitted Jessop. I'm afraid in this job I'm always a little suspicious of everyone. Yes, I can understand that, said Mrs. Betterton. She pushed her red hair back from her forehead. I can't bear it much longer, she said nervously. Just sitting and waiting. I want to get away. Go abroad for a while. Somewhere where the newspaper reporters won't ring me up all the time and people won't stare at me. I've tried to be brave, but it's too much for me. My doctor agrees. He wrote me a letter. She took an envelope out of her bag and gave it to Jessop. See what my doctor says. Jessop read the letter. Yes, he said. Yes, I see. He gave the letter back. So, can I go? She asked nervously. Oh, of course, Mrs. Betterton, Jessop replied in surprise. Why not? It's entirely your own business. Just let me know how I can contact you in case there's news. Where are you going? Somewhere sunny. Spain or Morocco? Very nice, said Jessop. I'm sure it will be good for you. Oh, yes, thank you very much. Mrs. Betterton stood up, excited and nervous, and Jessop showed her out of the room. When she had gone, Jessop sat down at his desk. Then he smiled very slowly. He picked up the phone. I'll see Major Glydr now, he said. Major Glydr? Jessop hesitated as he said the strange name. It is difficult to say, yes, said the visitor. Now, I live in America. I think I will change my name. Have you just arrived from America? Yes, I arrived a week ago. Jessup looked at his visitor. He saw a tall man who stood very straight and stiff, aged about 30. His fair hair was cut very short, and he spoke slowly and carefully. He seemed to be in complete control of himself and wasn't at all nervous. "How can I help you?" Jessup asked. "I came to ask if you had any news about Thomas Betterton. He is a relative of mine by marriage." "I'm sorry, but I have no definite news," said Jessup pleasantly. "I am told, Major Glydr, that you are the nephew of the late Dr. Mannheim." "Ah, so you know that already." "Yes, my mother was Dr. Mannheim's only sister. I am from Poland, but my parents died when I was young, and I went to live in Germany with my uncle and his daughter, Elsa. She was like a sister to me. Then came World War II, and my uncle and Elsa escaped to America while I stayed to fight in the Polish resistance against the Germans. After the war, I finally get to America, but alas," he spread out his hands, "my uncle, he is dead. My cousin too, and her husband has come to England and has married again. So once more I have no family. When I hear about the disappearance of the well-known scientist Thomas Betterton, I come over to see what can be done." He paused and looked at Jessup. "Do you know why he disappeared?" Jessup's face had no expression. "We do not," he replied. "But you suspect?" "It is possible," said Jessup carefully, "that his disappearance is connected to that of other scientists." "Did all these scientists disappear willingly?" "It is difficult to say," said Jessup. "Forgive me for asking, Major Glydr, but Thomas Betterton is related to you only by marriage. You don't know him. Why are you so interested?" "That is true. But in Poland, the family is very important." He stood up and bowed. "I thank you for your time." "I'm sorry I cannot help you," said Jessup. "But if I do have any news, where can I contact you?" "The American Embassy will know how to find me. I thank you." Again, Major Glydr bowed and then left the room. Back at his desk, Jessup picked up the phone. "Ask Colonel Wharton to come to my office." When Wharton entered the room, Jessup said, "Something is happening at last. Mrs. Betterton wants to go abroad." "Is she going to meet her husband?" "I hope so," said Jessup. "She showed me a letter from her doctor advising a rest and a change of scene. Of course, it may even be true." "Do you really think so?" "No, I don't. But she's very good at pretending. Very convincing." "Did you find out anything else?" asked Wharton. "Just that Betterton didn't tell his wife that he met Carol Speeder for lunch," said Jessup. "She might be the contact. And she had a letter from Major Glydr, a cousin of Betterton's first wife. He's just been here himself. We'll keep a close eye on him." "Where is Mrs. Betterton going?" "Spain or Morocco," she said. "They are the only two countries where Betterton hasn't been seen," said Wharton. "All right. We'll watch her very carefully. We'll use Janet, I think. Let's hope we get results this time." Jessup leaned back in his chair. "It's a long time since I had a holiday," he said. "I might even take a trip abroad myself. Air France Flight 108 to Paris is now boarding. On hearing this announcement, Hilary, Craven and the rest of the passengers walked out to the waiting aeroplane at Heathrow Airport. This is it, thought Hilary as she took her seat on the plane. I'm finally going to escape, away from the cold and grey, the pain and misery, to sunshine, blue skies, and a new life. The plane moved gently along the runway, and the air hostess told the passengers to fasten their seatbelts. With a roar of the engines, the plane took off, and soon they were flying up in the clouds. The roads and railways so far below looked small and unimportant. Hilary closed her eyes. She had escaped. She had left England, left Nigel, and left Brenda's grave behind her. She sat back in her seat and went to sleep. When Hilary woke up, the plane was landing, but not in Paris. We are landing at Beauvais because of thick fog in Paris, explained the air hostess. Once they were on the ground, the passengers walked through the cold, damp mist to a rough wooden building. It's an old war aerodrome, Hilary heard a man say. At least we're in France, so we should get something to drink. True enough. The passengers were soon given drinks while they waited. Hours passed and other planes landed. Soon the small building was full of cold, tired people complaining about the delay. Hilary felt like she was in a dream. She waited patiently until she was finally seated on a bus, which began its long, slow journey through the fog towards Paris. It was midnight when the passengers at last arrived at their hotel, and Hilary was so tired that she went straight to bed. Her plane to Casablanca in Morocco was due to leave Paris at 10:30 the next morning, but when Hilary arrived at the airport, everything was in confusion. Because of the fog, planes had been delayed all over Europe. After a long wait, Hilary was finally booked onto another flight to Casablanca. The fog has caused many delays, explained the busy clerk at the departure desk. But this plane will arrive in Casablanca only 3 hours later than your original flight. And what does it really matter, madam, which plane you take to Casablanca? But on that day, it did matter. When Hilary finally arrived at Casablanca and stepped out into the sunshine, the porter in charge of the luggage trolley said, "It was lucky for you, madame, that you were not on the earlier plane." "Why?" Hilary asked. "What happened?" The man looked around uneasily, but he knew that the news could not be kept secret. "It was terrible," he said quietly. "The plane crashed. Only a few people are still alive. They have been taken to hospital, badly hurt." Hilary's first reaction was anger. If I had been on that plane, she thought, I would be dead now. It would all be over, at last. She went through customs and was driven to her hotel. She had arrived. She had left cold, dark London behind, and now she was in a place of life and colour and sunshine. It was just as lovely as she had imagined it would be. She had escaped. But finally, sitting in her hotel room, Hilary realised that there was no escape. Brenda was still dead, and soon Nigel would be marrying his new wife. Those were the facts, and they wouldn't change. She still felt the same despair, whatever country she was in. There was no escape from reality. Hilary had survived a long illness, and then her husband Nigel had cruelly abandoned her. She had survived because she had Brenda, her daughter. But then Brenda had become ill, and finally she had died. Thinking with despair about her husband and her daughter, Hilary finally admitted that she did not want to live anymore. She wished she had died in the plane crash. It would have been so easy. If she had been on her original flight, she would now be dead and free from suffering. Well, thought Hilary at last, I can still end it now. I just need to go to a pharmacy. Hilary was surprised to find that sleeping pills were hard to buy in a foreign city. The first pharmacy did not give her enough, saying that for more pills she needed a prescription. On her way out, she bumped into a tall, serious young man who said sorry in English. She heard him ask for a particular kind of toothpaste as she left the shop. She visited 4 different pharmacies before she had enough sleeping pills. In the third pharmacy, Hilary was amused to see the serious young man again, still asking for toothpaste. And when she went downstairs for dinner, Hilary noticed the young man in the hotel dining room reading a French newspaper. After a good meal and a glass of wine, Hilary felt almost excited about what she was going to do. It was her last adventure. She went back to her room carrying a bottle of water, locked the door and took out all the sleeping pills. She just had to swallow the pills and her life would be over. Though she was a little afraid, Hilary was also calm. She decided not to leave a note. Nigel would read about her death in the newspaper. He didn't seem important anymore. She could do what she wanted, and she was ready to start her final journey. But as Hilary reached for the first sleeping pill, she heard a quiet knock on the door. She frowned and decided not to answer it. But after a while there was another knock, and Hilary watched in amazement as the key slowly turned in the lock and the door opened. In came the serious young man who had been trying to buy toothpaste. "What do you think you're doing here?" asked Hilary angrily. "That's just what I was going to ask you," said the serious young man, looking at the pills on the table. The situation was so strange that Hilary didn't know what to say. In the end, she asked, "How did you turn the key in the lock?" "Oh, that." The young man smiled and showed her a metal instrument. "You put it in the lock and turn the key from the outside," he explained. "Burglars use them." "So you're a burglar?" said Hilary. No, said the young man. "My name's Jessup. I did knock, if you remember. You wouldn't let me in, so I used this." "But why?" Again, Jessup looked at the pills on the table. "It's not like going to sleep," he said. "If it works at all, it can take a long time and can be very painful." Hilary forced herself to smile. "Do you think I was going to kill myself?" she said. "That's ridiculous." "I know you were," replied Jessup. "I followed you to those pharmacies and saw you buy all those sleeping pills." His voice was friendly and casual. Hilary stopped pretending. "You can't stop me," she said. "Even if you take the pills away, I can get some more. Or I could jump off a roof or in front of a train." "No," he agreed. "I can't stop you, but tomorrow you might not do anything. Tomorrow you might feel differently." "I don't think I will," Hilary argued. "My husband, who I loved, left me. My only child died painfully. I don't have any close friends or relatives, and I don't have any work or a job that I love doing. I don't think it's wrong to end my own life, so why don't you just leave me alone?" The young man looked at her thoughtfully. "So let's make sure I understand. You don't want to live any longer, is that right?" "Yes, that's right." "Good," said Jessup cheerfully. "Instead of sleeping pills, I'm going to suggest another way that you can die." "I don't understand what you mean," said Hilary in surprise. "Let me explain," said Jessup. "You may have heard that several scientists have disappeared lately." "Yes," said Hilary. "I've read about it in the newspapers." "Well," continued Jessup, "we want to know what's happened to them. Were all these scientists, there are lots of them, kidnapped? Or did they go willingly? Where have they gone? Who arranged everything and what do they want? There are so many questions, and you can help us get some answers." Hilary stared at him. "Me? How?" "A scientist called Thomas Betterton disappeared from Paris just over 2 months ago. His wife says she has no idea where he is." "I don't think that's true." Hilary leaned forward, interested in what he said, briefly forgetting her own problems. "We watched Mrs. Betterton closely," continued Jessup. "Yesterday she left England to travel to Casablanca. Her plane crashed." "I know about the plane," said Hilary. "I was supposed to be on it." "Mrs. Betterton is in hospital at the moment," said Jessup, "but the doctor says she won't live for long." "I still don't understand," said Hilary. "What does this have to do with me?" "Because you have red hair, the same as Mrs. Betterton," explained Jessup. "I'm suggesting that when Mrs. Betterton dies, you take her place. You pretend to be Mrs. Betterton. You try and reach her husband and find out where he is and what he's doing." "But surely," said Hilary, "they would know I wasn't really her." "We don't know for sure," said Jessup. "Often these people work in small groups for their own security. If Mrs. Betterton was travelling to meet her husband, all that the people here in Morocco know is that they have to contact a certain woman at a certain time and place. Mrs. Betterton's passport description is 5'7", red hair, blue-green eyes, just like you. We will arrange things with the French authorities so that officially you, Hilary Craven, died in hospital a few days after the plane crash. Mrs. Betterton will continue her journey, and being in a plane crash is a good cover story for you. Concussion can cause loss of memory." "It's a crazy idea," Hilary exclaimed. "Oh yes," said Jessup, "it is crazy. It's very difficult and dangerous, and if I'm being honest, your chances of surviving aren't high. You may well be killed. But that's what you want, isn't it? And this way will probably be more exciting than sleeping pills." Suddenly and unexpectedly, Hilary laughed. "I do believe you're right," she said. "I'll do it. Yes, I'll do it." "In that case," said Jessup, standing up with sudden energy, "there's no time to lose." In the hospital, Olive Betterton lay unconscious in bed. The doctor quietly told Jessup that she wouldn't live much longer. "What do you want me to say to her?" asked Hilary. "Find out any information you can," replied Jessup. "Any password, sign, or message. Anything that might help. She is more likely to speak to you than to me." Hilary nodded and went to sit by Olive Betterton's bed. She felt extremely sorry for the woman who lay there dying. Had she really been going to meet the man she loved? Time passed. It wasn't until 2 hours later that Olive Betterton's eyes opened for a moment, and a nurse left to find the doctor. The dying woman looked at Hilary with surprise. "Where?" Mrs. Betterton's voice was faint and breathless. The doctor entered the room and held Mrs. Betterton's hand. "You are in hospital, madam," he said. "There was an accident to the plane. Is there anyone you want to see in Casablanca? Any message for anyone?" "No," said Mrs. Betterton. She looked again at Hilary. Who? I came from England on a plane too, said Hilary. Please tell me if I can help you. No, nothing. The dying woman's eyes closed again. Jessup stepped forward. Can you tell me anything about your husband, Mrs. Betterton? Her eyes opened for a moment. No, she said. Jessup quietly left the room. It won't be long, the doctor said quietly to Hilary before he too left the room. The two women were alone. Olive Betterton moved her hand a little and tried to speak. It was obviously hard for her. Tell me. Hilary knew what she was asking. You are dying, she said clearly. Please listen to me. I am going to try and reach your husband, to reach Tom. Do you have a message for him? Tell him to be careful. Boris, dangerous. Her voice was faint. Is there anything you know that will help me? Asked Hilary. Snow, said Olive Betterton faintly. Then she made an effort to speak. Snow, beautiful snow. You slip on a lump and over you go. Go and tell him about Boris. I didn't believe it, but perhaps it's true. If it is, she looked painfully up at Hilary. Take care. A strange noise came from Olive Betterton's lips, and then she died. Hilary worked very hard for the next 5 days. She stayed in a private room in the hospital and memorized all the details of Olive Betterton's life that Jessop gave her. She learned all about Olive's house, her relatives, her wedding day, and her married life with Thomas Betterton. She knew all about Olive's pet dog, what she liked to eat and drink, and what the rooms in her house looked like. Does all this really matter? Hilary asked Jessop. Probably not, he replied. But you've got to think that you are Olive Betterton. You have to become her in every detail, and you haven't got much time. It's a good thing that you're intelligent and have a good memory. He looked at her thoughtfully. Although their passport descriptions were the same, Hilary Craven and Olive Betterton looked very different. You didn't really notice Olive's face, but Hilary's face was strong and her eyes were alive and intelligent. Hilary was enjoying herself and was interested in what she was doing, but she still had questions. How do you know that the people here won't know exactly what Olive Betterton looks like? I don't know for sure, admitted Jessop. It is a risk, but hopefully all they know is that Olive Betterton was arriving on that plane. She herself isn't a scientist. She's not important. It's only because of the plane crash, which was real, and your red hair that we can take this chance. All we had planned to do before was to watch Olive Betterton. That's all. Will you be watching me? Asked Hilary. Yes, of course, said Jessop, but I won't tell you how. Then you won't be able to tell anyone else. Do you think I would? I don't mean on purpose, Jessop said, but if someone surprises you, even a moment's pause or a look can give you away. The lessons continued, and Hilary learned not just about Olive Betterton, but also what she needed to do as she went on her journey. Jessop asked Hilary question after question, testing her knowledge and trying to confuse her. At last, he said he was satisfied. You're a quick learner, said Jessop. And remember, though you may feel alone at times, you probably won't be. I say probably, but I can't promise. And what happens, said Hilary, if I succeed? If I finally see Tom Betterton? Jessop looked serious. Yes, he said. That's the most dangerous moment. All I can say is that if everything has gone to plan, you should have protection. But at the beginning, I did say that your chances of surviving weren't high, though that was before I knew you very well." Hilary was pleased. "I have another question," she said. "What happens if I meet someone who recognizes me?" Hilary Craven. "Don't worry," said Jessup. "The people you travelled with on the plane have flown on elsewhere. When you leave this hospital, you'll be wearing Olive Betterton's clothes and your hair will be styled like hers. We have a doctor who will make it look as if you've been in an accident. No one will recognize you." "You think of everything," said Hilary. "And what do you think about what Olive Betterton told me before she died? She said, 'Tell him,' meaning her husband. 'Tell him to be careful. Boris. Dangerous.'" "Boris," repeated Jessup. "Yes, that's interesting. She must have meant Major Boris Glydr." "Do you know him?" asked Hilary. "Who is he?" "If he is who he says he is, he's a cousin of the first Mrs. Betterton." "She was frightened," said Hilary, frowning. "Tell me what he looks like, so I can recognize him." "He's about 6 feet tall and has short fair hair, light eyes and is rather stiff." Jessup paused. "I had him followed when he left my office," he said, "but he went straight to the American embassy. Then we lost him. But yes, I think that Olive Betterton was right when she said that Boris Glydr was dangerous." 2 middle-aged ladies were sitting in the small lounge of a hotel in Casablanca. Mrs. Baker, short and round, with blue-tinted hair, was writing letters. She was an energetic woman who loved to talk, a typical American travelling abroad. Miss Hetherington, who was obviously English, was knitting a shapeless-looking jumper. She was tall and thin with badly styled hair and a disappointed expression. The 2 ladies had been staying at the hotel for a few days and had got to know each other. They both looked up as they saw a tall woman with red hair walk past the door of the lounge. "Did you see that woman with red hair?" whispered Mrs. Baker. "They say she's the only survivor of that terrible plane crash last week." "I saw her arrive this afternoon," said Miss Hetherington. "She came straight from hospital in an ambulance. The hotel manager told me she had concussion," continued Mrs. Baker. "I see her face was bandaged. Poor thing. I wonder if she was travelling with her husband." "I don't think so," said Miss Hetherington. "In the newspaper it said she was travelling alone." "Her name is Mrs. Betterton, I believe. Now where have I heard that name before?" Looking pale and ill with her face bandaged, Mrs. Betterton had arrived at the hotel, where the manager showed her to her room. When he had gone, Hilary lay down on the bed, thinking that Olive Betterton would need to rest. Olive Betterton's passport now had Hilary's photo on it, and her signature was in Hilary's handwriting. Everything was organised, but there were no letters or messages for her at the hotel reception desk, and all Olive Betterton's tickets and travel plans were now out of date. The real Olive Betterton, however, had been in a plane crash. If Hilary forgot any instructions or things she had to do next, she could blame the concussion. All she could do now was to wait and see if anything happened. In the evening, Hilary went downstairs to the hotel dining room. People stared at her and whispered, obviously talking about the accident. After dinner, Hilary sat in the lounge and picked up a magazine. She wondered if anyone would talk to her. There were 1 or 2 other women sitting in the room, and soon a small middle-aged woman with blue-tinted hair moved to sit near her. "Please excuse me," the woman said in a pleasant voice with an American accent, "but are you the woman who escaped from that plane crash?" Hilary put down her magazine. "Yes," she said, "I am." "That crash was terrible," the woman said. "Can I ask Mrs. Betterton," said Hilary. "Can I ask Mrs. Betterton if you were sitting in the front or the back of the plane?" Hilary knew the answer to this question. "Near the back," she said. "Did you hear that? Miss Hetherington?" said the woman, turning to include another middle-aged lady in the conversation. "They do say the back of the plane is the safest place to be. I won't sit near the front again. Let me introduce myself," the woman continued. "My name is Mrs. Baker, and this is Miss Hetherington." Hilary politely said hello. "I've been travelling round Morocco," Mrs. Baker continued. "Are you planning to visit Marrakesh, Mrs. Betterton?" "Yes, I am," said Hilary, "but I need to rebook my tickets." "Marrakesh is very expensive," said Miss Hetherington, "though I have heard of a nice hotel there, very clean and with good food." "Where else are you going, Mrs. Betterton?" asked Mrs. Baker. "I would like to see Fez," said Hilary carefully. "Have you been there?" "Not yet, but I'm planning to go there soon, and so is Miss Hetherington," said Mrs. Baker. "I believe the old city is well worth seeing." After the three women had talked a while longer, Hilary said she was tired and went upstairs to her room. Had she achieved anything? She wasn't sure. The two women she had just talked to seemed so normal, such typical travellers. She would see if anything happened tomorrow. The next morning there were still no letters or messages, so Hilary decided to go to the travel agency to rebook her tickets. After waiting in the queue, she finally reached the front desk and told the clerk her name. "Ah, yes. Madam Betterton," said the clerk. "We received your telephone message, and I have all your new tickets and travel plans ready for you." Hilary was excited. She hadn't phoned the travel agency. This was a definite sign that Olive Betterton's travel plans had been arranged by someone else. Outside, Hilary looked carefully at her new tickets and saw that she was booked to leave for Fez the next day. Back at the hotel, Hilary didn't see Mrs. Baker again, and though she did see Miss Hetherington, she didn't speak to her. And the next day, Hilary left by train for Fez. The weather was perfect, sunny and clear, as Hilary looked out of the train window on her way to Fez. In her carriage was a small Frenchman who looked like a businessman, a nun, and two Moroccan ladies with lots of packages who talked happily to each other. The Frenchman offered to light Hilary's cigarette, and soon he was talking about Morocco and telling Hilary about some of the sights that they passed. He was an interesting and intelligent man. "It must be a change for you," he said. "Coming here from England, so cold, so foggy, so unpleasant." "Yes, it's very different here," Hilary agreed. "I myself travelled from Paris 3 weeks ago. There too there was fog and rain, while here it is all sunshine. How was the weather in England when you left?" "Like Paris," said Hilary. "It was foggy." "Ah, yes, it is the foggy season. And snow. Have you had snow this year?" "No," said Hilary. "There has been no snow." She was amused that the Frenchman thought the English always talked about the weather. The journey continued. The two Moroccan ladies got off and other travellers got on the train. It was evening when they arrived at Fez. Hilary stood on the station platform, confused by the noise and the shouts of all the porters who wanted to take her luggage. "Let me help you, madam," said the Frenchman. "I believe you said you were staying at the Palais Jamai. It is 8 kilometres from here." "It's not in the town, then?" Hilary asked. "It is by the old town," the Frenchman explained. I am staying here in the city, but the Palais Jamai is where people go to relax. It has beautiful gardens, and from there you can go straight to the old city of Fez. I will arrange a taxi for you." "You're very kind," said Hilary gratefully. The Frenchman arranged everything for her, and just before she left, he gave Hilary his card, which read, "Monsieur Henri Laurier." Hilary sat nervously in the taxi. Was she really going to her hotel, or was this where her journey into the unknown began? But soon she did indeed arrive at the Palais Jamai, a lovely old Moroccan palace with a terrace overlooking a beautiful garden, full of orange trees and scented flowers. Her room was decorated in Eastern style and was full of modern comforts. Later, Hilary enjoyed an excellent dinner and then had coffee outside on the terrace. There she noticed a very old man with a yellow-tinted face and a small beard. The hotel staff served him very attentively, taking away his empty plates immediately and hurrying to his table as soon as he looked up. Hilary wondered who he was, but she was too tired to think about it and went to bed early. The next morning, Hilary sat outside in the sunshine under a red striped umbrella. It was strange to sit in such a peaceful place, pretending to be a dead woman. As she watched children run up and down the terrace, Hilary couldn't believe that anything unusual was going to happen. The old man with the yellow face came up to the terrace from the gardens below and sat down at a table nearby. When Hilary ordered a drink, she asked the waiter, "Who is that old man over there?" "That, madame," the waiter said quietly, "is Monsieur Aristides. He is enormously rich." Hilary looked over at the old man just as he too looked up. They stared at each other for a moment until the old man looked away. Hilary thought that Mr. Aristides' eyes looked alive and intelligent. Later in the afternoon, as Hilary was resting outside, a shadow suddenly appeared on her chair. She looked up, surprised to see Mr. Aristides. He was not looking at Hilary, and when he turned round, he accidentally knocked her glass off the table. "Ah, pardon me, madame," Mr. Aristides said politely. Hilary smiled and said in French that it did not matter. Mr. Aristides then told the waiter to bring her another drink before he apologized again and went into the restaurant. When the waiter brought her drink, Hilary asked him if Mr. Aristides was alone at the hotel. The waiter was shocked. "Oh no, madame," he said. "Monsieur Aristides is so rich that he never travels alone. He has a personal servant, 2 secretaries, and a driver." But when she went into the restaurant, Hilary noticed that the old man sat by himself. The afternoon passed very pleasantly. Hilary walked through the beautiful gardens, looking at the oranges and smelling the different flowers. The place was very peaceful, and Hilary wished she could stay forever. It was strange that she had found peace at last, just when she was starting a dangerous adventure. But perhaps there was no danger and no adventure. When she went back inside the hotel late in the afternoon, Hilary was surprised to meet Mrs. Baker in the lounge. "I've just arrived by plane," Mrs. Baker explained. "Trains are so slow and the people in them aren't always very clean. Now tell me what you've been doing, Mrs. Betterton. Have you seen the old town yet?" "No, I'm afraid I haven't," said Hilary, smiling. "I've just been sitting in the sun." "Oh yes, you've just come out of hospital," said Mrs. Baker. "I suppose you must be tired." "I never feel tired. Do you remember Miss Hetherington, the Englishwoman at Casablanca? She'll be arriving here this evening. She prefers to travel by train, or perhaps that's all she can afford. Now I must go and sort out my room. I didn't like the one they first gave me." Mrs. Baker left, energetic as always. Hilary saw Miss Hetherington in the dining room that evening, and then she and the two new arrivals had coffee together. Miss Hetherington had discovered that a rich Swedish businessman was staying at the hotel with a blonde film star. "And they're not married," she said excitedly. "There's so much of that kind of thing abroad. There's a nice French family at the table by the window, though, of course, French children are allowed to stay up far too late. Their parents even let them drink wine." She sounded horrified. Meanwhile, Mrs. Baker was making plans for the next day. "I've been to the old city before," she said. "It was very interesting, but I was glad I had a guide with me. All those twisting streets. Without him, I would have become very lost. Of course, he took me to a friend's house, they always do, and wanted me to buy lots of souvenirs. I had to be quite firm." Miss Hetherington sighed. "It would be nice to buy souvenirs, but they're so expensive," she said sadly. Fortunately, Hilary was able to visit the old city of Fez without Miss Hetherington or Mrs. Baker, who had gone on a sightseeing trip by car, for which Mrs. Baker paid. With her guide, Hilary walked down through the gardens of the hotel until they reached a big door in the wall. And through that door, Hilary stepped into another world, the old city of Fez. Hilary wandered through the narrow, twisting streets, interested in everything she saw. She enjoyed looking around her at the busy life of the Moroccan city. The only annoyance was her guide, who talked all the time, asking her to buy things. "You look, lady," he kept saying. "This man have very nice things, very cheap." Hilary walked for what seemed like hours, until finally her guide said, "I take you to very nice house now, lady. Friends of mine. You have tea and they show you many nice things." Because she was tired, Hilary allowed herself to be taken to an attractive house outside the city walls. Here she drank mint tea and, to be polite, bought a few small souvenirs. "Now I take you for a nice drive to see very beautiful views," said her guide, "and then back to hotel. But first, this girl will take you to very nice lady's toilet." Smiling a little, Hilary followed the girl to the toilet, which she was pleased to find had running water. But when she had washed her hands, Hilary found that she couldn't open the door. Why had she been locked in? Then she noticed another door in the corner of the room. This door opened easily, and Hilary walked into a small room lit by high windows. Sitting on an Eastern-style chair was the little Frenchman she had met in the train, Monsieur Henri Laurier. "Good afternoon, Mrs. Betterton," he said. For a moment Hilary was too surprised to speak. So this was it. This was what she had been waiting for. She stepped forward. "Do you have news for me? Can you help me?" He nodded. "On the train, madame, you were rather stupid. Or perhaps you always talk about the weather." The weather? She stared at him. What had he said about the weather? Cold, fog, snow. Snow, that was it. Olive Betterton had talked about snow. What was the silly rhyme she had said? Hilary remembered. Snow, snow, beautiful snow. You slip on a lump, and over you go, she repeated to Laurier. Exactly, said Laurier. Why did you not follow your instructions and say that before? You don't understand, said Hilary. I was in a plane crash and I've been in hospital with concussion. It has affected my memory and I've forgotten a lot of important things. Yes, said Laurier. The plane crash was unfortunate. His voice was cold. But are you now ready to continue your journey? Of course I am, said Hilary. I must see my husband. He smiled, but not a very pleasant smile. You were questioned by the British authorities, he said. Do you think they suspect you? I don't know, said Hilary. They seemed satisfied, but I have the feeling that I'm being followed. We know that, said Laurier coldly. We are not stupid. I'm sorry, said Hilary. I'm afraid it's me who is stupid. It does not matter if you are stupid. As long as you do as you are told, as long as you obey. I will obey, said Hilary quietly. Now, madame, I will give you your instructions, said Laurier. The day after tomorrow you will fly back to Marrakesh. There you will receive a message telling you to go back to England. I am going back to England? Please listen. I have not finished. You will book a seat on the plane leaving for Casablanca the next day. Do you understand? I understand, said Hilary. Then please return to your guide. You have been in here long enough. But before you go, I believe that you have become friendly with an American woman and an English woman at your hotel. Yes? Is that wrong? No, it fits in with our plans. See if one or other of them will come with you to Marrakesh. Goodbye, madame. Hilary went back to her guide. I have very nice car waiting, he said. I take you now for very pleasant drive. So you're leaving for Marrakesh tomorrow, said Miss Hetherington. You haven't stayed very long in Fez, have you? No, agreed Hilary. But my tickets are booked now, and I think it will be too difficult to change them again. There are so many other people travelling. Not English people, said Miss Hetherington sadly. They all seem to be French. Hilary smiled faintly. The fact that Morocco was controlled by the French did not seem to matter to Miss Hetherington. There are a lot of Germans and Swedish people here too, added Mrs. Baker, and I'm told that that little old man over there is Greek. He seems to be important, or at least the waiters think he is. I wish you two would come to Marrakesh with me, said Hilary. It's been so pleasant talking to you here, and it's very lonely travelling by myself. But I've been to Marrakesh, said Miss Hetherington in a shocked voice. Mrs. Baker, however, seemed interested. That's quite a good idea, she said. I'd like to go back to Marrakesh, and I can show you around. I'll go and see if I can arrange it. She stood up and hurried off with her usual energy. That's just like Americans, said Miss Hetherington, annoyed. They always rush from place to place. Sometimes I don't think they know what country they're in. She picked up her knitting and said goodbye to Hilary before going upstairs. Hilary sat alone in the hotel lounge. She was thinking about the future. Now she was going to start her real journey, so she must be very careful and not make any mistakes. She must be Olive Betterton. devoted to her husband. Hilary jumped in surprise as she saw the small, wrinkled face of Mr. Aristides suddenly appear before her. He bowed politely and asked if he could sit down. After a moment or two, he asked, "Do you like this country, madame?" "I've been here only a short time," said Hilary. "But yes, I love it. And the old city of Fez is wonderful." "Yes, it is wonderful," he agreed. "There everything is dark and secret, shut in behind narrow streets and walls. Do you know what I think of, madame, when I walk through the streets of Fez?" "No." "I think of that main road into London, the Great West Road. I think of the great factory buildings on each side of the road, brightly lit, so you can clearly see all the people inside as you drive along in your car. There is nothing hidden. There is nothing secret." "So you mean," said Hilary thoughtfully, "that you are interested in the contrast between them, Fez and the road in London, because they are so different?" Mr. Aristides nodded. "Yes," he said, "but although they look so different, the same things happen in both places. There is always cruelty and there is always kindness, one or the other, sometimes both." He continued without changing his manner. "I have been told, madame, that you were in a very bad plane accident. I envy you." Hilary looked at him with astonishment. "Yes," he repeated, "I envy you. You have come close to death, and yet you survived. Do you feel different since then, madame?" "Only in a bad way," said Hilary. "I had concussion, and so I get headaches and forget things easily." "Those things will get better," said Mr. Aristides with a wave of his hand. "But you have had an adventure of the spirit, have you not?" "It is true," said Hilary slowly, thinking of her pile of sleeping pills. "I have had an adventure of the spirit." "I have never had that experience," said Mr. Aristides in a dissatisfied voice. "So many other things, but not that." He stood up and bowed politely. "Goodbye, madame," he said, and left Hilary sitting alone once again. All airports are strangely alike, thought Hilary, as she waited for the plane to Marrakesh. And why do you have to get there much too early? They had been sitting in the waiting room for nearly an hour. Mrs. Baker, who had decided to come with Hilary, had been talking for the whole time. Now, thankfully, she was talking to two other travellers who were sitting near her. They were both tall young men with fair hair. One was an American with a big, friendly smile, and the other was a rather serious-looking Norwegian who talked slowly in careful English. The American was clearly delighted to find another traveller from his own country. Mrs. Baker turned to Hilary. "Mister," she said, "I'd like you to meet my friend, Mrs. Betterton." "My name's Andrew Peters," said the American. "My friends call me Andy." The other young man stood up and bowed rather stiffly. "My name is Torquil Eriksson," he said. "Now we all know each other," said Mrs. Baker happily. Suddenly the loudspeaker gave an announcement in French, telling them that they could now board the plane. As well as Hilary and Mrs. Baker, there were 4 other passengers: Peters, Eriksson, a tall, thin Frenchman, and a stern-looking nun. It was a clear, sunny day, good for flying, and Hilary sat back in her seat and looked at her fellow passengers. Mrs. Baker was reading a magazine. Now and then, She tapped the shoulder of the fair young American, Peters, who was sitting in front of her. He always turned round with a smile, responding to Mrs. Baker's remarks with enthusiasm. How friendly Americans are, thought Hilary, not like the English. Sitting across from her was the Norwegian, Torquil Eriksson. As she looked at him, he nodded and offered her his magazine to read. Hilary thanked him and took it. In the seat behind Eriksson sat the thin Frenchman. His legs were stretched out and he seemed to be asleep. Then Hilary looked behind her at the stern-looking nun, who looked back at Hilary with no expression on her face. She sat very still. 6 different people, thought Hilary, travelling together for a few hours and then separating, never to meet again. She closed her eyes and thought again about the instructions she had been given. Why was she going back to England? Didn't they trust her? Had she made a mistake? Or was it because she was being watched? To get home, she would have to stop in Paris, and Tom Betterton had disappeared in Paris. Was the same thing going to happen to her? At last, she grew tired of thinking and fell asleep. When she woke up, the plane was flying in circles, preparing to land. Hilary looked out of the window, but she couldn't see an airfield below her, nor could she see any houses or a town, just desert. This wasn't Marrakesh. Where were they? The plane landed with a bump in the middle of nowhere. The pilot asked them all to get out. Had something gone wrong with the plane, Hilary wondered. Outside, the wind blew cold from the snow-topped mountains in the distance. The pilot asked them to wait, and soon they saw a vehicle moving slowly towards them. It was a big car, a station wagon. "But why have we landed here?" asked Hilary. "What's the matter? Did the engine fail?" Andy Peters smiled cheerfully. "I don't think so," he said, "but I'm sure that's what they'll say." Hilary stared at him, puzzled. The station wagon arrived and the Moroccan driver got out. Together with the pilot, and with help from Eriksson and Peters, they lifted out a large, heavy crate from the back of the car. As they went to open it, Mrs. Baker led Hilary away. "Don't watch, my dear. It's never a nice thing to see." The Frenchman and Peters followed them. "Are you Dr. Barron?" Mrs. Baker asked the Frenchman. "I am." The Frenchman bowed. "I'm pleased to meet you," said Mrs. Baker, shaking his hand as if she was welcoming him to a party. "I don't understand," said Hilary. "What's in that crate? Why is it better not to look?" Andy Peters looked at her. He had a nice face, Hilary thought. "There are bodies in the crate," Peters said. "The pilot told me." "Bodies?" She stared at him. "Oh, they weren't murdered or anything," he smiled. "They're dead bodies used for medical research." But Hilary still stared. "I still don't understand," she said. "You see, Mrs. Betterton, this is where the journey ends," explained Peters. "They'll arrange the bodies in the plane and then set it on fire. People will think that another plane has crashed with no survivors." "But why?" said Hilary. "Don't you know," said Dr. Barron, "where we are going?" "Of course she knows," said Mrs. Baker cheerfully. "But I don't think she expected it to happen quite so soon," Hilary said with surprise. "But you mean all of us?" She looked round. "We're fellow travellers," said Peters gently. The young Norwegian, Torquil Eriksson, nodded in agreement. "Yes, we are all fellow travellers," he said with enthusiasm.